The churches of the 4th to 7th centuries are of great importance to the history of architecture. Since they were constructed during the early Christian period, they contain vital elements of architecture of the antique period. They are the foundations of modern church architectural composition, construction, and artistic creations. These early Christian temples share similarities with the Syrian worship temples of the time. This is not a sheer coincidence. Christianity entered Armenia from Assyria, and the first Armenian Bible was translated from Assyrian. Naturally, the architecture was influenced by the Assyrian culture. However, this influence was not purely Assyrian, since basilicas were already widely spread in the Near East. By time, the church architecture developed further to include more structures and detail. It is during this time that the dome became an essential part of the Armenian churches. Until the 6th century, the domes were not built. Some experts say that domes infiltrated the Armenian architecture from the neighboring countries. However, the more dominating view is that the principle of the dome came from prehistoric times and from centuries of architectural tradition in Armenia. Corbelling, or erecting a wooden domed roof over a square building, was widely practiced in Armenia in the construction of public and domestic buildings. In Armenian, these roofs were called hazarashen, which means consisting of 1,000 layers. This technique consisted of laying short wooden beams across the angles of the square formed by the 4 columns or 4 walls. The Armenian master builders translated this technique into stone and succeeded in building monumental domed structures in masonry. This view is supported by the fact that domes of churches from 6th to 7th centuries in Armenia are very unique and very similar to the Armenian hazarashen roofs. In the early Middle Ages, new techniques were created for processing stone, masonry, and others. Buildings were built using mortar, which replaced the dry building method. Walls were built in 3 layers. Mortar of lime, scoria, and pumice were filled between the outer and inner layers. As a main building material, tuff, limestone, granite, cobblestone, sandstone, basalt, marble, and andesite were used. The stones of inner and outer walls could get as thick as 80 centimeters at some points and as long as 3 meters. The roofs were made of tiles of baked clay, which were laid directly on the mortar and were fixed together by nails. What is interesting about these architectural structures is that they met some seismological standards, and logs were placed inside the walls to allow future expansions. Some structural units have special signs inscribed by the master builder. One architect or master supervised construction of buildings, and each one had their own symbol. These symbols were placed on walls for computational purposes. These symbols were straight, circular, and even included decorative carvings. Starting from the 6th century, new types of churches were built, which were classified according to their architectural style. The main categories were single-nave churches, tri-nave basilicas, domed basilicas, cruciform plan central dome churches, domed halls, and circular churches. The single-nave churches had rectangular plan, simple and comparably smaller and with modest architecture. The semicircular altar was located at the eastern side of the church. One would also encounter variations of this type, such as churches with external halls. These churches had double slanted roofs. The western and eastern sides had triangular arrangement. It has been estimated that these churches belong to the 4th to 6th centuries, taking into account the records from the ancient manuscripts and their architectural styles. Some examples of the single-nave churches are the Garni, Devin, Gervesh, Arush, Tallinn, Hovanavank, Vizhny, Jarjaris, and other churches. The Church of Jarjaris is located in the region of Arakatsotan, near the village of Arakatsot. The exact time of building and master's name are not known. However, from its architectural style, it can be deduced that the church belongs to the 4th to 5th centuries. The church is made of the local grey tuff. The ceiling is covered by tiled roof. The plan is 6.62 by 17.63 rectangular shape, with an altar in the eastern side which has a pentagonal shape on the outside, and from the inside it is horseshoe shaped. This church has absolutely no windows. Instead of the usual window at the central side of the altar, a cross is engraved on the outside. The single-nave church of Tanahat is again of unknown origin. It is found near the village of Arabus in the region of Sunik. Like the previous church, it is again in a half-ruined state. The plan is 6.85 wide and 13.55 meter long rectangle. It has a semicircular altar on the eastern side. There is another altar on the southern side and vestry with square plan where the clergy, vestments, and sacred objects are stored. The estimated time of building this church is 5th to 6th century. This church is mentioned by the historian Stepanos Orbelian as the famous church of the princes of